Hey, nice people. How you doing? And someone asked me about Christopher Dunn's power plant book. He says, Charles, look into this. What do you think? And lots of people keep asking me this question. So I'll look a little bit deeper into it in this video. And we're going to come to a conclusion that Christopher Dunn actually has it. I think he's got the cart before the horse. I think, yes, there is something energetic, electrical associated with the pyramids, but it derives from the shape of the mountain and not from what he's suggesting. Now, he talks a lot in his book about acoustic resonators. He talks about input coming in for a shaft there, output there. Maybe there's a satellite up there. Maybe it's in communication. Maybe it's beaming energy down. Maybe energy beaming up. And we're going to show that this is not quite what the Egyptians were into. And I'm going to show you that actually Nikola Tesla had a much better... I reckon Nikola Tesla in his Wardencliff Tower, he had something very similar to the Great Pyramid. We're going to see exactly why. It's really interesting. So stay tuned. And I think he was more correct maybe than Chris Dunn, but I respect Chris Dunn. I have to say that. This is a great book. So first we will address Dunn's claims, which we're going to explain in the way in which he's wrong, and I think he's wrong, and ways in which he is correct, because I think he has something. There's something to his arguments, I have to say. So the problem that Chris Dunn has started in, I suppose, the late 19th century. People became bamboozled by the Great Pyramid and only the Great Pyramid, and they said, well, it must be built by God. It must contain a prophecy of the future. It must talk about the end times because it's so perfect. They said, well, hang on, if it's perfect, it's built by God. And the pyramid is even a symbol of God in Catholic churches, which is interesting. Maybe a holdover from the Romans. But the problem with the pyramidology, which is based on the quite real ancient idea that the pyramid contains all the world's measurements and science, is that it ignores all the other pyramids around the world. And Chris Dunn treats, as the Egyptian archaeologists do, the Egyptian pyramids in isolation. And in fact, Chris Dunn doesn't talk about the Egyptian pyramids. One would expect if it was a power plant, they would all be power plants. But Chris Dunn just talks about the Great Pyramid, even though it's so similar to the Khafre Pyramid, he doesn't talk about that. Even though it's so similar to the Menkaure Pyramid, he doesn't talk about that. And this is a major issue because Chris Dunn himself says, if we want to explain how the Great Pyramid works, we should explain every detail of it, all the shafts and everything. Well, how about explaining all the other pyramids as well? Because I think that is how you make a theory correct. But, what do I know? So, so after all talking about all this, we're going to talk about how Tesla's idea is similar to the Egyptian idea. And Tesla, we're going to say Tesla had a very similar, I reckon Tesla was onto something similar to what Christopher Dunn's postulating. And I reckon this is contained within the Great Pyramid's design. The pyramid is actually designed to spit out an output of a type of energy. We're going to look at that. But that is not the main purpose of the pyramids at all, which archaeologists correctly say is to protect Egypt forever. And the evidence for this is that it is literally world mountain. We'll see why. But we'll look at how the Wardencliff Tower's shape determines its use, the plasma bulb that it uses, because people don't explain how it works. When they talk about the Wardencliff Tower, we'll explain a little bit about how it works. And we'll talk about the actual possible electrical or mechanical power supplies actually used by the ancient Egyptians, which deliver usable energy, because I don't think Christopher Dunn's idea delivers usable energy at all. And a quick reminder, I'll be doing a 75-minute segment in July. So if you want to check that out and all the other segments that are on, it's all about Australian archaeology and the weird Stonehenges. I'm talking about the Stonehenge that was uncovered in the 1880s, then demolished, forgotten by history. Here in Victoria, we had an ancient civilization, 2 on Falmai, a north-south alignment here in Western Victoria. I'll go into that for 75 minutes. So back to Dunn. So Dunn is a brilliant author, writer, investigator. And I'm not attacking him or even refuting him because at the end of the day, no one's got a time machine. So I found his work very enjoyable. However, I would actually have to argue with almost all of it, as I have investigated worldwide pyramids myself and have come to a similar but actually different conclusion. I do think he's onto something, but not in the correct, not around the right way. So my conclusion is that pyramids were not built in this way, the way they're built, to generate light or energy phenomena directly. Rather, they are built in this way because mountains, which they represent, generate energy phenomena automatically. The interior shafts are not important for this. The interior shafts are for something else. And what the pyramid is, in Egyptian, it is Mer. And the inescapable conclusion that I've come to is that that means Mount Meru, an Indian word, which means that there were ancient Aryans living in Egypt that brought a European language to Egypt in primitive times. They lived in Egypt. Maybe they founded Egypt. Indo-Europeans. Mer means walls, probably the walls of the Giza Plateau, a walled mountain. And Mount Meru is World Mountain in Hindu, in India. World Mountain is a literal microcosm of the Earth, a plan of the Earth, and that explains automatically why there are all these Earth measures in the Great Pyramid, because no one knows why. This is why. Hence, the pyramid's accuracy is not for the generation of power. Now, Christopher Dunn in his book actually says that the reason all the Earth ratios are in the Great Pyramid is because it has to be a microcosm of the Earth in order to resonate with the Earth. But yeah, maybe there's something to that idea, but that's not the reason. The reason is it needs to be World Mountain. It needs to be a microcosm for religious reasons. So Chris Dunn's theory ignores worldwide pyramids. That's the major shortcoming. And it superimposes some 20th century science on 2500 BC. I say that in spite of the fact that Livio Stacchini said that the ancient Egyptians had a space age level of science. A space age level of science. Because they knew all the dimensions of the Earth. But I do think Chris Dunn is very close to reality, because he's tripped up on something which is interesting. And so I'm not debunking what he has to say. I'm just saying that he's realized something important. We'll talk about the burning bush, the mountain voltage phenomena that occur in mountains, why they're sacred. So it's a really entertaining book. It gets 5 stars on Amazon. I don't think it's a correct theory, but he's onto something. So in his theory, let's just have a quick look at this. There's a subterranean chamber, and he says, let's try and investigate everything, put everything into one dynamic theory. And he seems to do that. I don't think he does. I certainly wasn't convinced after having read the book. But anyway, microwave signal input, microwave power output, resonant quartzile chamber, acoustic filter, resonator hall, drain, reaction chamber, hydrated zinc chloride solution, dilute hydrochloric acid solution, feedback mechanism. No, look, no. I think it's more for light phenomena. That's why we have equal lengths of shafts. And even for light experiments, even astronomy experiments, even gravity experiments, a 19th century level of science, if they wanted to do that. But he's treating it like it's you'd put feedstock directly into these rooms, is how he's treating it. And I don't think they're even equipped for that or big enough for that, to be honest with you. So I wrote down the bottom, since it's talking to a satellite, microwave power output, because he speculated this, where is mission control? Where are the wires? Where are the computers? The fact is there's not enough room in there. So Chris Dunn's theory begins with the conclusion that it is a power plant and then proceeds to prove it. And that's what I think is the major shortcoming of the book, because the book has so many admirers. And I honestly don't think it's the best theory on the planet. So the end result is nothing's proven. And this is what I don't like about the theory. I'm not saying it's a wrong theory, but I don't like that nothing's proven and no experiment is built for testing. No calculations. Energy of MASER is not specified. MASER being created by chemical reaction and lenses. No idea what it might have been used for, and resonance. What was the MASER used for? How is that energy? Suggests communication with satellite or even interplanetary. No calculation of energy involved. I think unfortunately it's guessing. So it remains a hypothesis evidently generated by the desire, as he states, to explain or account for every aspect of the pyramid's internal features as if it was a power plant. So he started from the premise, if it is a power plant, this is how it would work. So hats off to him for doing that. And assumes original pyramid users were irreligious as well. It's a mistake that Kurt Mendelsohn makes in his pyramid book as well. He says, oh, they built the pyramid to unify Egypt, to get everyone in the one place, working on a big project to control them. Yeah, that's all they needed to build a pyramid for, oblivious to the fact that there are pyramids all around the planet. Yeah, that argument never mentioned. So we've found also on my channel that causeway alignments point to religious holidays. So there is religion associated with the pyramids. So Dunn introduces ideas such as piezoelectricity, but that's barely a source of energy. It's more like a crystal field emanation. And Earth's resonance would cause the rock to emit a pulse, yes. Any rock would do this. Would enough of it cause it to resonate in a certain way to power the MASER? I don't know. So my theory is internal. Look at the long internal accurate passages and imagine a kind of light show which we haven't discovered yet, just as in what I believe is the Great Pyramid's immediate predecessor, Newgrange. And there's a possibility for science work at a 19th century level in exploring light, gravity, etc. in the Great Pyramid. I think they had a 19th or 20th century level science. So, in addition, a great part of Dunn's theory is that it resonates with the Earth. The pyramid resonates with the Earth. I believe and I believe it does. I believe it does do that. He got that right. We'll see why. However, I believe the mechanism is not shooting a MASER out a shaft. We know the shafts aren't even perfectly straight. And the key is the sharp point, the pointy bit at the end of the pyramid. That is where the energy emanates, I believe, because that is where it would emanate from an electrostatics perspective. If we were talking about Earth energy coming out of the Earth, being concentrated in the pyramid, and then moving towards a point out of which it emanates, just like in electrostatics, things come literally out of a point and you get spark discharge. So what we're really talking about is in terms of the Great Pyramid as a power device is the interaction of the Earth with atmospheric electricity to create a light display. And that is probably what is happening. So my theory is you can't collect too much energy from a MASER or any energy. So how is this a power plant? But you can concentrate, I could be wrong, but you can concentrate voltage at the pyramid's point. That's what points are for. So think of, for instance, the burning bush on a mountain. Mountains are magical places. They're weird. You feel creepy on a mountain. There's creepy energy all around you. Magnetism affecting your mind. I remember once we camped on a mountain in a very remote place, nobody around, no one else around for miles and miles. And I tell you what, it's really creepy when you camp on a mountain. It just feels creepy. Nick Roerich travelled in the mountains. I love his Altai Himalaya, which I'm reading at the moment, and it contains information that I've read in many other places. We're going to see what that is. This is that electrostatic phenomena actually emerge from mountains. It's natural. So in this diary, I've only read a third, and he says already, on a sacred morning upon the mountain, started to glow rows of fire, another mystery. And he says, an unusual fire in the village Niimu. I was awakened by the exclamation of EI, fire, fire. I awoke and saw the silhouette of EI against a background of undulating bluish flame. Gradually the fire died out. It appears that EI approached the bed and touched the blanket. The bluish flame, warm and odorless, flashed up to EI. I tried to extinguish it with her hands, but the flame spread more and more strongly. Then she called to me. The fire ceased as it begun, without leaving the slightest trace of anything. Unforgettable was the leaping flame. Unconsuming and vivid, the tent was entirely illuminated. And that's in just one book, and I haven't even finished it. And I read this over and over. Plasma leaves the Earth through points, or even through water sometimes, through lakes, but it leaves the Earth through points, maybe shoots off into space. So mountains in this way, they are electrodes, they are antennae of the Earth. And the Egyptians might have known this. So they are reaction points between Earth voltage and atmospheric voltage. Mountains are electrodes of the Earth. And now we get into Nikola Tesla territory because he knew this. So the Wardencliff Tower, Very interesting. It has an inverted hemisphere on top. And here's an aside, only because this channel exposes neglected history / inaccurate archaeological conclusions since I have begun this channel. That's what it's been all about. That's my quest. The Tesla fans have polluted history. I'm sorry to say this. The Tesla fans have polluted history because they are historians of Tesla, but they are not really interested in electricity phenomena in general without Tesla involved. That's what I'm finding. Half of them are like that. And they have altered online history to show that Tesla has invented things which he hasn't. Thus, Wikipedia contains fake information on electrical history, as we're about to see. And you need to know this in order to understand what Tesla was doing with the Wardencliff Tower, because he didn't invent that. He sort of came up with it based on what was already known and what he inferred. So what I've discovered, he's amazing. Tesla's amazing. One of the best scientists of the 20th century, and yet he's overblown by his fans because I have 19th and 18th century books which contain many of Tesla's so-called inventions or inventions he created by modifying earlier authors' experimental works. The authors are by forgotten scientists, such as George John Singer, Elements of Electricity and Electrochemistry, and he talks about fluorolights in 1804. I've only read a quarter of it. They say Tesla invented these. Andrew Crosse, CF, his wife Cornelia Crosse, who wrote Memorials, Scientific and Literary of Andrew Crosse after he died, and he made a variant of the Wardencliff Tower to control a thunderstorm in the early 1800s. He died in the 1850s. And Francis Hawksbee, a brilliant English scientist, his book is 1709. He talks about fluorolight experiments. You never hear of these three scientists, unbelievable electrical scientists, genius inventors, unbelievable. You know what? Even better than Tesla. I have to say, even better than Tesla, but Tesla was a master of alternating current and applying high voltage to earlier experiments. That was his genius. So Tesla was clearly a big reader, and his fans actually don't know this. They think he originated everything. But this isn't in the history books. As like many great scientists, philosophers, Tesla did not cite his sources, but he would actually talk about, he actually did mention a few times that there was, I think, a great Serbian scientist in the past whose books he read and people were ignorant of. So he read old scientific books, and I read them too. So if you're a Tesla fan, I don't mind if you don't believe this, because I know the truth about your God. And I capitalize the God because that's how some people treat him. Right. So because I've read those books, and only because I know more than the Tesla fans and even electrical scientists about what Tesla was doing with his Wardencliff Tower. And it's a similar design to the Great Pyramid because any mountain is an antenna. That's what it is. So firstly, we need to go into Andrew Crosse, the real-life Frankenstein. I've made a video on this guy a long time ago, and I've republished it on this channel because he made a Wardencliff Tower, which the Tesla in the Tesla version did something similar to what the Great Pyramid is doing. We're going to see that. So just quickly, an aristocratic landowner. He was a lord in his 20s. He worked with his electrical friend George John Singer, who died quite young in his 20s. To build a vast electrical power network across his property, wires strung up everywhere on high poles. He had laboratories to build everything, but never had enough time to carry out all the experiments he wished. Had his experimental notes survived the fire in his mansion in the 1890s, he may be remembered as a 19th century Tesla, but he is now forgotten. Everything, all equipment and books, burned. He worked in isolation in the Quantocks, but was visited by 19th century geniuses such as Baron Liebig and Humphrey Davy, etc., who travelled a long way to see him and marvel. Only his wife's book remains of what he did and the scope of his work, and even with her incomplete but devoted understanding, it is clear it is work not equalled or even attempted today. And I myself want to do some of his experiments. I need to build a laboratory or something. So everything else is lost. We cannot attribute anything to him. Andrew Crosse could, from his philosophical realm, control the thunderstorm. He could drain it of its energy, turning it into a different weather system, or return the energy to the thunderstorm from the earth. Tesla must have read this and combined his understanding of plasma balls, I believe an earlier invention. He didn't invent plasma balls either. in creating this as the node of plasma discharge, it is clear to me that Tesla set this up as the first of many such transmitters because it was also a receiver. A ball is used in electric research for collecting charge, but also accumulating and only projecting once it reaches a spark of certain size. So the Wardencliff Tower, if his system had worked, there would have been many of them around the world, and it can be used for transmitting or receiving based on the earlier Andrew Crosse discovery that you can send the energy back into the atmosphere. So we infer that Tesla must have seen the Earth's atmosphere as a closed system with no leakage into space. Hence, he could treat the Earth like a giant plasma ball, like one of those plasma balls that you buy in a store, and there won't be a leakage. You can just send the energy around the Earth. Thus, with the plasma ball in mind, we can explain this. So using Tesla's system, identical layouts to Wardencliff could both project as well as receive charge from the atmosphere depending on where electricity was needed. However, I reckon his other invention, AC, allowing long-distance transmission, seems to have made this obsolete. Perhaps Tesla realized this and no longer pursued his tower ideas for this reason. That's my guess, and what an irony. So here we have an arrow pointing to this hemisphere, and you think, why is it a hemisphere? Why? I'll tell you why it's a hemisphere. Hemisphere to collect broadcast charge from the hemisphere around it. So this is the node inside a giant plasma ball, which is the hemisphere of the Earth, and sparking between the upper atmosphere and this ball. So pyramids actually come with similar hemispheres in the past, is what I'm learning, and pyramids are indispensable. Hemispheres are indispensable to pyramids. So the Etruscan pyramids demolished. These are all hypothetical representations of the one pyramid of Porsenna, 500s BC. At their omphalos in Etruria, the center of Etruria, they built this not as a tomb to Porsenna as the Romans thought, but to protect, as the later Romans thought, but to protect Etruria forever. And Etruscan pyramids, were they also electrical scientists? The ball is essential in the design. So in an earlier video, we mentioned a spherical representation is indispensable to the true pyramid, and that was a discovery of this channel. Now, that does look familiar because there was, as we know, there was an Arab source, and he said there was an upside-down hemisphere or an upside-down, upturned bowl or an inverted bowl on top of the Great Pyramid. And whichever way facing it was actually showing what Livio Stacchini discovered in the 1940s to the 70s, that the Great Pyramid is a representation of the northern hemisphere of the Earth. And now we have a Wardencliff-like tower situation where the pyramid can gather Earth's emanations, project them through a point, collect them at the top. Is this how the pyramid used to look? It was, according to an Arab source. Equals. There we go. And this was taken several years ago, 5 to 10 years ago. And allegedly a genuine photo of energy being projected upwards. I don't know if that is genuine or not, but that's the general idea. Major conclusion, we have seen that yes, power may be involved, but I do not believe we are looking at a maser, more like a kind of light show or attempt at this. The sphere was an essential part of pyramids, as we discovered in an earlier video, as that the pyramid must represent the spherical nature of the Earth. So, as a PS, what power did they use? And this is the thing, and I've mentioned this several times throughout the history of my videos. In the last 4 years, I've been, making videos intensively, that this is found in the Library of Alexandria. Is it a steam engine to crush geopolymer or to move blocks? We know that there was a kind of conveyor belt in the Arab legends. They would tap a stone when it was ready to move, and it would go shooting off on a magic carpet. And to me, that's almost like Henry Ford's mechanized power plant, isn't it, in a way? This one's ready to go, coat it with geopolymer, or this one's ready to be coated with something, or to send it on its way on conveyors. So how old is the steam engine? Well, it wasn't even invented by Heron of the hundreds AD, or even the 200s AD. It wasn't invented by him because it goes back to Vitruvius, the Roman, and he mentions these. Ilopilli are narrow brazen vessels which have an opening or mouth of small size by means of which they can be filled with water. Prior to the water being heated over a fire, but little wind is emitted. As soon, however, as the water begins to boil, a violent wind issues forth. And he actually goes on to say this is how we teach people how the winds on Earth are generated, by the way. But even earlier than this, both Hero and Vitruvius drew on the much earlier work by Ctesibius, who was an inventor and mathematician. This is 200s BC in Alexandria, Ptolemaic Egypt. I bet you, like Heron, like I was telling you before, Heron must have got his work from an earlier author. And I got this from Wikipedia now. I've confirmed that I was right. He got it from earlier authors. Another Crosse thing has been proven to be correct, as usual. And but look, an inventor, when he's got access to a library, the library was well established. Seems like he himself is looking at earlier ideas. This steam engine thing goes all the way back, and they're only playing with the most basic of the steam engine. What about the earlier books showing the more complicated steam engines, and they've not survived? How does this thing just exist in isolation? It doesn't make any sense. And then the trail goes cold. So much has been destroyed, but I speculate steam engines go all the way back, their knowledge preserved for amusement and toys in the classical age. See also my video, Mechanical Power Network. I've speculated that a mechanical power network might have been used to help build the pyramids as well, and this was used in mining until about the 20th century, like water wheels driving long arms, connecting up power networks kilometers in length to drive machinery. Thanks.